zone coverage. We're at Stewart's TV and Appliance in the Sub-Zero Wolf Kitchen for our weekly look at everything having to do with the Cleveland Browns. I'm Scott Petrak, Browns beat writer for the Chronicle Telegram, Medina Gazette, and BrownZone.com. And this is Jim Ingraham, our sports columnist. Well, Jim, the Browns fall to 0-11 on Sunday, 30-16 at Cincinnati. And I'm starting to worry that we were the jinx. You know, we've been doing this show now for 11 or 12 weeks, and they haven't won a game. And then I remember they were 0-11 last year on their way to 1-15, so I didn't feel so bad. Coming away from that game, you know, another relatively close loss, I suppose. They still lose by double digits, but they were in it into the fourth quarter. But the play that stands out and is getting the most attention is Jabril Peppers' hit in the fourth quarter. He tries to dislodge the ball from the receiver, gets called for a 15-yard penalty. Bengals keep the ball, score the touchdown, game over. Hugh Jackson says the hit was clean. The players say the hit was clean. Jabril Peppers said it was the right call. What was your take on that?
Well, I thought it was clear that he hit the receiver's jaw with his helmet. It may not have been strictly a helmet-to-helmet hit, but I think that is against the rules when you hit a guy in the jaw with your helmet. And you know, I think Peppers is the guy. If he thinks it was an illegal hit, you might want to go with that. They're actually lucky they didn't get called on interference, because before that hit even happened, it was a call that could have been called interference. So I thought it was a penalty all along, and I was a little surprised when there was this kind of mini controversy brewing over whether it was or not.
I'm with you, and the reaction from the fans, I get it. They're frustrated. You know, the Browns haven't won. It's a close game. They have a chance. And it looks like a play, or it is a play, that maybe 7, 8, 10 years ago was legal. And if you do it and you hit the receiver, it's a big hit. Everybody celebrates. But with the focus on player safety, you just can't make contact to the head and neck area. And to me, he clearly hit him in the jaw. Whether or not he hit him in the chest and went up, it doesn't matter. That's not what the rule says. So, I think it's the right call. And obviously, it's kind of a confluence of events. Peppers hasn't made a play all year, finally makes one. The number one pick or the first round pick, you think, okay, he did something. The flag comes. They're, in the game against their rival. They had just gotten within a touchdown. But, I think at the end of the day, it was the right call. And then Hugh Jackson's got to realize that and kind of come forward and say, you know what, we have to teach our guys to aim lower. It's just a different place where they are in the game. You have to aim a little lower. And I'm glad that Jabril Peppers at least realized that.
Yeah, and it's unusual for the coach to not just take the referee's side just for future reference. You don't want to look like a nitpicker with the referees.
Yeah, and let's talk about the defense a little bit before we go to bigger things. They've shown improvement from last year to this year, especially against the run. But then against Cincinnati, they give up 100-some yards to Joe Mixon, 5.1 a carry. It feels like to me this defense is kind of at a tipping point. They had a bad game against Detroit a couple weeks ago when the offense played well. The offense plays well enough in Cincinnati, and the defense doesn't play well again. Do you feel like it's starting to get away a little bit from Greg Williams and his group?
Well, this goes back to, what Hugh Jackson said, which is true, that they have to play perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, if either unit, any of the three, special teams, offense, defense, doesn't have a really, really good game, they have no chance to win. And in the Bengals game, the defense started to waver a little bit, and it doesn't take much to throw the whole thing out of kilter. I do think that I've had questions about the defense all along. I mean, the usage of Peppers where he's not even in view of the camera at the start of the play, I think you're just kind of eliminating your own playmaker that you drafted to be a playmaker. So I think there's that, and then they missed Garrett for a little while. But, yeah, the overall consistency, and I think that run stat might be a little deceiving because teams pass on them so well that, of course, they're not going to run as much. So I'm not sure they're as good as their stats sometimes say they are.
Yeah, and the bottom line is they give up too many points, and they're terrible in the red zone. They're the last-ranked team in the red zone because they give up touchdowns nearly every time. And you're not going to win games like that, especially when your offense doesn't score in the red zone. That's how you lose games. Well, the biggest story this week, and the biggest story it's been for a couple weeks now, is Josh Gordon's return. The suspended receiver looks like he's going to make it to Sunday. We're still a few days away. He's been close before, but never this close since he started getting suspended. Jim, how do you think the Browns have kind of handled this? They've welcomed him back with open arms when Hugh Jackson had been done with him. And now they're not pumping the brakes at all. They're like full steam ahead. Mm-hmm. Hugh Jackson has got big plans for him. Are you okay with how they're dealing with the guy that's, coming off an addiction? I mean, he was in rehab a couple of months ago.
Yeah, in a perfect world, in a team that's not in the dire straits that this one is in, maybe all this doesn't unfold this way. But I mean, they're desperate for a win. They're desperate to save their jobs. They're desperate for a receiver that can catch the ball. And here comes a guy that can catch the ball when he's eligible to play in games. So I think all this confluence of events, that they're going to embrace him and just hope he can give them a reason to get excited about a game, which hasn't happened very often this year. And I think there's a chance that he can do that. But, with Josh Gordon, you just never know from week to week or day to day how dependable he's going to be.
Right. And, we talked to him last week, and I've always liked Josh. And I think he's got some depth to him. And, I liked talking to him again last week. The problem is, he's lied to us so many times, and he's lied to everybody. He's lied to the Browns. He's lied to Hugh Jackson. There's a Sports Illustrated article came out yesterday or today, and it's talking about how inside the interview he lied, and then he had to kind of apologize afterward. So you just never know how much you can trust him. But you're right, the Browns don't have a choice right now. They need somebody. They need somebody to kind of take the attention off 0-11, which makes me ask you, what are your expectations for Josh? Not only this weekend against the Chargers, but he's got 5 games. Do you expect him to be a force on the field?
Well, I think first and foremost, if he can just show up and play in all the remaining games, regardless of how productive he is, I think that'll send a good message to the Browns and to the other teams that I'm over this problem I have and you can count on me, and then we'll worry about production after that. I would assume he's going to make some catches that the old Josh Gordon made, and that's the kind of thing everyone buys into when he comes in. But I think that the biggest thing that teams probably want to see, including the Browns, is, are you going to stay clean for the remainder of the season? Are we going to have you on the field for all of these remaining games? And then we'll think about next year after that.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see just how good he is, because when he came back in 2014, he was out of shape. He had a bad attitude, yet he still had big numbers. He still caught, I think, 120 yards in his first game, played a ton of snaps. I'm looking forward to seeing DeShone Kizer with Josh Gordon. You have Josh Gordon on one side, Corey Coleman on the other, and I think you get an evaluation of your rookie quarterback, a fairer evaluation than what we've seen through the first 11 games. But, it's not crazy to think that he could score 5 or 6 touchdowns in 5 games, and that would just change the way you look at the offense and Josh Gordon and kind of where this team was without a legitimate playmaker. Jim, we're 5 weeks away from the end of the season, and we've talked about it before. Do you still think that they're going to get a win? Because we're in a historically bad stretch anyway, right? 4-44. Hugh Jackson's 1-26. It's the worst start ever for a coach. Ties the worst start ever. Do you still see a win over these final 5 games?
Well, my inclination is to say yes, because 0-16 is really, really hard to do. Right. Maybe even harder than 16-0. So they should, but when you look at the schedule, I mean, even you get down to that last game against Pittsburgh, everyone thinks that, well, if they have that thing clinched and they can't help themselves in that game, maybe they don't even care about it. But it's still Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh doesn't have to play very hard to beat the Browns, who really would be reeling then if they go into that 0-15. So, the Chargers now, they're back in the hunt, it looks like. So this is a big game for them. The Packers are on the periphery, even without Rodgers, that may be a game that'd be tough for them. I just don't see a win there that you can even say maybe on the best day they could win that game. I'm starting more than ever to think they're just not going to win one the rest of the way.
Yeah, I still think they have a chance. I would still predict that they win 1, maybe even 2. I think Chicago on Christmas Eve is kind of the same 2 teams playing each other, so you never know how that's going to go. And like you say, 0-16 is really hard, but the closer you get to it, the pressure starts to build. This team doesn't want to go winless. It's going to be difficult. I'm still going to win. I don't think it's going to happen this week. I think the Chargers are probably the least likely opponent in the last 5 for them to get a win. But, it's fascinating, and you can see the pressure. Chris Kirksey, after the game, kind of blows up and says, men don't quit, men fight to the finish. You can see the pressure building. Just real quick, Jim, do you think they have a chance this week in L.A.? It's not San Diego anymore. It's L.A. against the Chargers. What kind of game do you think?
I don't think they have a chance. I mean, Rivers is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and they've been vulnerable with those kind of guys. I think best case scenario, Josh Gordon has a big game, and it's not enough for them to win. But if they get a good game out of Gordon and some hope for the future, that's about as good as it would get.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup. I think Phillip Rivers, you mentioned, they have 2 really good pass rushing defensive ends. Joey Bosa, who was at Ohio State, and the Browns passed up on him a year ago in the draft. Spencer Drango has struggled in the last couple games replacing Joe Thomas. It's a bad matchup. I just think the Browns can't keep up. I'm going Chargers 27, Browns 17. Thank you for watching. We'll be here again next week at Stewart's TV and Appliance.